Today I'm going to be making homemade marinara sauce. It's really, really good and it's easy to make. I'll be honest, it's a little bit more difficult than some of the other tomato recipes that I've shared, like tomato juice and pasta sauce, but it's still not difficult. So come along and I'll show you how to make it and how to can it. As always, here's the ingredients and directions if you want to screenshot it. Otherwise, I will have this in the description below. Now, here's a little tip. The longest part of this process is the simmering process to make it thick. If you want that part of the process to be very fast, you're going to want to use paste tomatoes or Roma tomatoes because they have very little juice in them. I have some Romas, some paste here, and some regular tomatoes. I'm just going to use a combination of all of them to use what I have on hand. Like always, the first thing you're going to do is rinse off your fresh tomatoes real good. Sorry, I gotta explain something real quick that I forgot to mention when I was recording this video. For marinara sauce, you wanna make sure you remove the skin and the seeds of the tomatoes. You can do that a lot of different ways. I'll tell you the three main ways. The first way requires no special kitchen tools. And that way is to blanch your tomatoes. You're gonna bring a pot of water to boil. You're gonna throw in your whole tomatoes into that pot for about 30 seconds. You'll see the skin start to get crinkly or wrinkly. You're gonna then pull them out and put them into an ice bath. After about a minute, those skins will just peel right off. Then you just cut the seeds out and the core out. The way that I did it, which you'll see here in just a second, is I cooked the tomatoes that were cut up first, and then I ran them through a food mill, and that keeps all of the seeds and the skins on top, and your juice and your pulp runs down below. The third way is to use a food processor. Either before or after you cook everything, you run it through a food processor to turn it into a puree, and then you get a mesh colander, put it on top of a giant pot, you pour everything into it, and the liquid will sink down below, and everything else is left on top. I wouldn't use that for this though, because some of the pulp will stay in the mesh colander, and you want to get as much pulp as you possibly can into this. Okay, let's get to it. And then you're gonna take the core out and cut them up. I usually do the really big ones in 6 pieces, the medium ones in 4 pieces, and the tiny ones I just cut in half. Honestly, there's no wrong way to do this here, just cut them up. And you're going to place all those cut up tomatoes in a giant stock pot. Now we're going to dice up an onion and add all of the extra ingredients you see here right into the pot with the tomatoes. Now, we aren't hoity-toity or stingy here. All these ingredients came from Walmart except for that honey in the middle, that's local, until I can harvest some honey from our bees. For the record, I did use fresh basil because my sweet neighbor gave me some. Thank you, Carissa, but the other spices were just dried. Now give it a good stir, put the lid on, bring it to a boil, and let it simmer for 20 minutes. Okay, it's not done yet, but we're getting close. You can see how there is so much juice now that all the tomatoes have sunk down into it. And if you look at the tomatoes, you can tell a lot of them are ready. The skins have fallen off, but some of them are still pretty hard. You want it to be really soft. That one's hard. So we're just gonna cook it probably 5 more minutes. Okay, we are done. Everything is nice and soft and cooked. Now we're gonna scoop that into this and run it through a feed mill, and that is going to remove all of the seeds and skins. So the process of putting the tomatoes through the feed mill is not as bad as it looks. It took about 15 minutes for that giant pot to all go through the feed mill and for me to remove all of the seeds and the skins. And trust me, this process is worth it. You do not want to skip this step to make a classic marinara. Occasionally, your food mill will collect a lot of scraps like this, so you want to make sure you scrape it out with a spatula and then proceed. This is what the food mill strained out. And this is what we're left with. So now we're gonna simmer this for probably, I'm gonna guess 1 to 2 hours. Sometimes it takes up to 4, depending on how much juice you have in there. So we're just gonna simmer it until it gets thick. Okay, it's been 2 hours and 15 minutes and it's officially to the consistency that I want. It's pretty thick. And oh my gosh, it looks and smells amazing. My whole house smells so good. So what I'm gonna do now is prepare my lids and jars, and I'm not gonna let this cool down, but I'm just gonna let it stop boiling. I'm sterilizing my jars by cooking them in the oven at 250 for 10 minutes. And I'm sterilizing my lids by putting them in a pot of water and bringing that water to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, you can shut them off. They're sterilized and ready to be used. And I'm bringing my giant stock pot of water to a boil. Looking at the bottom on here, obviously you can see where you can either water bath these or pressure can these. I'm gonna water bath them just because I don't have my pressure canner out today. So the pints are gonna water bath for 35 minutes, quarts would be 40. If you wanna pressure can them, it's 15 minutes for both pints and quarts. And of course you're gonna do that at 10 pounds pressure. That's if you live at under 1,000 feet. But if you're over 1,000 feet, make sure you adjust it accordingly. Also, this is the time where you wanna do a taste test. It's obviously still gonna be extremely hot, so let it cool down first. But this is the point where when you taste test it, if you feel like it needs a little bit more sweetness, add some honey. If it needs more salt, pepper, whatever you think, you can still add it in at this point. Let's try it out. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It's delicious. I got my sterile jars out and we're gonna go ahead and fill them. I will say that I'm using some pints and then those are 16 ounces. And then I'm using the 12-ounce tall jelly jars. This to me is just the perfect size for marinara because whenever I use it, I don't need a large amount. So I'm gonna use this for the nights that we make pizza and then this for the nights where we just need a little bit of marinara sauce for whatever the heck it is we want. This is the point where you would want to put your citric acid or lemon juice into the bottom of your jars before pouring your tomato mixture on top. I'm gonna be honest, I omit the citric acid, but that is not USDA approved. I just don't like the acid taste that the citric acid and lemon juice gives to my tomato products when I can them. I know a lot of Italians and Amish people do not use those and they're fine. But if you want to follow USDA guidelines, no problem. Put your citric acid and lemon juice in before you fill your jars. All right, I got all my jars filled and I left my inch ahead space. Now, as you can see, the 20 pounds of tomato turned into 5 of the tall jelly jars, which are 12 ounces, and 4 of my pint-sized jars, which are 16 ounces. Now let's put our lids on and can them. Wipe those rims with the wet rag, then apply your sterile lids, then put your bands on to fingertip tight. I got my jars back in there and per usual, the boiling stopped. That's okay. Give it just a few minutes. Once it comes back to a rapid boil, then you can set your timer. As you can see down here at the bottom, our pints are gonna be for 35 minutes. Time's up. Let's take them out. There they are, all done. Look at it, so dark red. Oh my goodness. Little does the world know that these jars are filled with the most delicious marinara sauce they will ever eat in their entire life. I also need to give a little bit of context here to explain how good this marinara sauce actually is because it's delicious. I made like 10 marinara sauces. The past year or so, I've just botched everyone. They're not terrible, but they're not great. They're just kind of meh. And so finally I took like 5 recipes. I took the stuff from the recipes that we liked and I omitted the stuff we didn't like and I made this one. And I had every intention on deleting this video because I thought it was gonna turn out bad like all the other ones did, but I was completely shocked. It's so good. It's exactly what I was looking for. Flavorful, thick, rich, but not overbearing with vinegar or spices like I had in previous ones. It's just perfect. So if you're looking for a perfect marinara sauce, this is it. Anyway, I'm probably way too excited about this, but there it is. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, happy homesteading.